What's going on, everyone? My name is Zach. In this video, we're going to go over everything you need to know about Claude skills and how to get started for yourself. By the end of this video, I'm going to give you two things. I'm going to give you a framework that is going to help all of this information stick, and I'm going to give you a tool to make this process significantly easier for yourself. Before we get there, the tool only works if you understand the thinking, so stick with me through some of these frameworks because I promise this is going to help make a lot of it a lot more clear for you. So at its simplest level, a skill is just a set of instructions that Claude follows. It is a markdown file called skill, whatever the skill is, .md. It lives inside your workspace. It's written in plain English. To execute it, you just type a / command. So if you've ever played video games or been in Discord, you type a / command to invoke that skill. When you do that, Claude will read that file and then execute on the instructions. That's all it is. It's a file in words that produces real output every time. Imagine it as an SOP that you would give to an employee. If you're unfamiliar, SOP is just standard operating procedure. So you can have your own definition of done, you can have tools built in, and then you just have detailed instructions on how to go from this point to this point, and then all of the individual steps in between. And the reason we use skills is because we get the same quality, the same structure every single call, and this is what makes it viable for business instead of just using the normal web interface. Because if you've used the web interface, you know that if you ask it to do the same thing multiple times, you're going to get multiple different answers. So before we go any deeper, I'm going to give you some quick proof on this. This is how I run an entire program. The entire program is for a separate video. But over the last 4 months, we've produced or processed close to 10,000 ad creatives that have been launched onto active brand ad accounts. And over those 4 months, those creatives have spent over $2 million on those accounts. And I am the only person running the entire technical backend, the entire QA system, the entire project management system, everything on that. I am the only person involved in building the software at this point that runs all of this. I'm going to show you how to get results like that, but for now you just need to know that these just aren't toys, that these are incredibly powerful tools that you can use to expand your leverage inside of your business or inside of whatever role that you have. Before I show you everything they can do, I do have to be real with you because there is a lot of noise out there. You're going to see, especially with how technology or with how these AI systems and whatnot have improved, a lot of people are basically saying that, oh, I have 65 agents that run my entire business for me and I don't have to do any work. A lot of this is just bullshit. It's just noise, and I want you to ignore all of it. Because the people are promising that you can just type a / command, give it no context, and get something valuable. And it's simply just not, it's just not true. Because the value of this comes from the intelligence applied to your context. So if you just take the raw intelligence and then give it no context, it has no way to actually be valuable to you. So anytime somebody says, just here, download this thing and it's going to provide value in your business and you don't have to do anything, just please remove that from your awareness because it's just a waste of time for you to explore. However, on the flip side, if you look at this from a fundamental perspective, if we can build from the context and produce value from there, anything that we do is going to make the business significantly better, and all of our solutions are going to be inherently more valuable. So instead of just giving you a fish, I want to teach you how to fish and be able to do this for yourself. So let's go into what these skills can actually do. If we boil it all the way down, we have the ability to read, write, edit, create, delete files on our local machine. So markdown documents, TXT, CSV files. We have the ability to create, modify, delete, do whatever we need to at a local level. We have terminal access, so we can run commands, we can run scripts using our computer. And then we have the ability to interact with the internet. So if you've used any type of software at this point, you've probably seen integrations and APIs and things of that nature. Any software that we have the ability to hook into, we can communicate with, get information with, or push information to. And then we can chain these functions together to create really powerful workflows. And the beautiful part about this is all of it is written in plain English. So let me show you. I actually pulled up a skill over here, and this is going to be the skill that I'm going to show you later as a demo. But basically, all it is, hey, this is what it is. This is what it's named. This is when we use it. Here's the arguments you can pass into it, so additional parameters and things of that nature. Here's how you validate inputs, install dependencies, run analysis, verify the output, and then troubleshoot. It reads as plain English. It is just words. There's no code. There's nothing of that nature that we have to worry about in that. It's just English. Don't let it fool you that if it's just English, it must not be powerful, because what this allows us to do is we have the ability now to interact with as many services that we need to on the web, inside of our computer, inside of our context base or our code base. We can analyze information, we can digest information, we can produce reports. We have the ability to mass upload, edit, modify, whatever we need to do. And we have the ability to compress manual workflows that would have taken hours down into minutes because of the clunkiness and the context switching of the manual nature of the tasks. We just have so many possibilities that we can do here. It's actually a little sickening because they're so ill-defined. We're actively discovering these additional use cases as we are building tools and as we're building systems, so on and so forth. So if you've used tools like this in the past, like if you've used Zapier, Make.com, or N8N or anything of that nature, this is essentially the same thing on the action side, but we are being the trigger. So we are instructing Claude, we're giving it a trigger to then go do actions in a bunch of different softwares, or run series of code, or run specific processes that we've previously defined. The cool thing about this as well is if you've used prompt templates or whatnot in the past, you can also paste those in there and go through just a prompt, just a workflow of prompts. The difference between Claude Code or Claude Skills and these other automation platforms is Claude Code isn't trapped inside of a flowchart, and we just have infinitely more flexibility to what we can build. And they run in plain English, and they branch on context, and they can use judgment. So it's crazy. I hope you really start to see what you can do. And as promised, I'm actually going to show you a live skill right here. So I'm going to run this one. Basically what we do here is we have a skill that we're invoking. So we have a / command, and then we have 4 arguments that we pass in. And what this is going to do is it is going to go through each of these individual steps. So we have the arguments, the ones that are required. We have the description, etc. It's going to validate all of the inputs. It's going to make sure we have the dependencies, and then it's going to run the analysis. In this case, by running the analysis, it is running a Python script that is going to parse all of the CSV data and then produce an output for us. So let's take a look back. This will probably only take 10 to 15 seconds. Cool. So we can see that only took about 20 seconds to run, and it's already generated a report for us. This itself is not going to look too impressive, but wait until you see this. Please give me a week-by-week rundown of everything inside of that report. Once again, this will take another 10 to 15 seconds. So we can see now that from this report that it created, we have an entire story of what happened on this ad inside of that ad account. And previously, to get this type of information, it was not directly available inside of Meta. So we would have had to export this into Google Sheets or into a different platform and then process the data. And to do that, there's so many opportunities for errors and whatnot to get in there because of the manual nature of the work. So something like this would have taken an hour, 2 hours, something like that, just to process, and we did it in a matter of 1 minute. And so if you kind of extrapolate how many situations you have like this in your business, in your role, in whatever, where you either don't do it because it takes too much time, or you have to do it and then you spend your entire day just doing things that don't really, like, they're important but they don't really drive that much value, but they take a lot of time and energy, so you just don't feel like you can build much leverage on the business. We just have so many opportunities to make our lives significantly better. And so with that, I believe that we are fundamentally going to see a big shift in how knowledge work is done, or what knowledge work looks like over the next few years. And the reason is because what Claude Code unlocks really illustrates the previous situation that we've been dealing with, or the previous paradigm that we've been operating from for the last close to a decade at this point, which was that we were very doubly constrained. So we were constrained on a platform or software level, and we were constrained on a people level, because the platforms only allowed us to take specific actions inside of the software. They only gave us specific functions we could use, specific API access, so on and so forth. And then we were limited on the people who understood how these softwares work, how to make softwares connect with each other, how to make them talk to each other and build these cohesive systems. So we had the platform side, and then the people side. So because of that, we had the constraints on both ends, which made the entire process just really annoying. And I can speak very well to this because I used to be one of those people. I was paid by companies to make those connections and build cross-platform, cross-software systems. So you always had to compromise. Either that was the cost of the project, the integration limits, build cycles, priorities of the business, the people involved, so on and so forth. And now that's just not the case, because we can use Claude skills to build our own custom bridges, our own connections, our own workflows. And if something doesn't exist, we can fill that gap. And if something does exist, we have the ability to work with it, and we have more lateral movement with it. So it's just so much more powerful. And the beautiful thing about all of this is we can do it all from the written word, which is just incredible. And to really just try and give you a visual of what this looks like, in reality, most of the processes we do on a daily basis, we just want to go from here to here. There's not that much actual work that's involved to get from here to there, but because of the limitations of the internet, the softwares, the tools that we're using, we would have to create so much additional distance just to get from here to there, which creates a lot of waste, and also means that there's significantly more handoffs through the entire process, which means it's more fragile than just going from here to there. So hopefully you can see that with Claude skills, you have the ability to just go from here to there. Beneath all of this is, beyond just a shift in technology, we are approaching what a few people have called a phase shift. And the phase shift that we are going between right now is the difference between syntactic and semantic programming. So the old way was syntactic programming, meaning you needed to fit all of the context and all of the information about your business into the syntax or to the constraints of the coding language or the softwares that we were using. Now we are moving or transitioning towards semantic programming, which means we're using the meaning of words to program. And by using the meaning of words to program, we are operating from a higher abstraction layer. And a lot of you guys are probably going to be like, oh, what the hell is an abstraction layer? It's very simple. It basically, all it boils down to is when we operate from a higher abstraction layer, we just hide more complexity beneath. So the example I put here is when you drive a car, you press the gas pedal and the car moves. You don't need to know about combustion, fuel injection, gear ratio, transmissions, differential ratios, whether your car is front wheel drive or rear wheel drive. You don't need to care about any of those things. The pedal itself is the abstraction, and everything else beneath it is hidden from you. And software has a similar stack to this. If we take Python or JavaScript and bring it all the way down, it'll go to C, assembly, and then binary, basically just boiling all the way down to ones and zeros. Shout out to Jake Van Cleef. I'll link one of his videos in here, which is fantastic, going over the different abstraction layers. And then on top of the coding languages, so Python, JavaScript, I don't know, Ruby on Rails, whatever language you want to think of, the next layer up is just the written language. And to give you a visual example of this, we now get to operate on this level. We get to operate from, this is what I need you to do. This is how I know it's done. This is when you need to do it. This is why you're doing it, instead of operating from this level. I hope this really drives the point home that now we get to spend our time designing and building processes like this instead of having to pay people to produce this for us. So this means significantly more. This means a lot of things all simultaneously. Every time we operate from a higher abstraction layer, it's available to more people. So now we don't need to rely on people who know how to do this because we're operating from this layer. And then anybody who can operate inside of any business or anywhere who understands this layer now gets to move faster because they already know what's going on under the hood. So they can instruct or direct the intelligence using better semantic communication. And then, so if you have the ability to type and you have 8 brain cells, you can absolutely make powerful systems with this. And it unlocks a crazy amount of functionality, leverage, everything. Whatever you need inside of your business, it's incredible. But what the really helpful part of this is it lets you pick an output and it helps you get there in one session. So beforehand, if you had ever tried to do anything new, or if you were trying to like onboard a client or figure out how to build a better media buying flow, or trying to figure out a system for inventory and forecasting or anything of that nature, it's an awful process sometimes to go through and try and reverse engineer how to do this on your own. Whereas now with skills, we have the ability to reverse engineer from the outcome that we want, take the straightest line back to where we are, and then bridge the gap in a single session. And it's not just changing specifically how we're building, it's changing who can build things. So as I mentioned before, with the double constraints that we had the platform side and then we had the people side. So both of those now dissolve because anybody who can describe the work can now build the system. We don't need Python, we don't need consultants, we don't need dedicated departments. And now the person who holds the institutional knowledge can build the solution themselves, which is huge because anytime you have to have somebody else build a system on behalf of another person, there's always going to be a game of telephone where this person thinks they communicated everything they need to the person building the system, and back and forth. There's always going to be a loss in communication, whereas on this side, the person who owns the knowledge or holds the knowledge, they have the ability to build the system and cut out essentially the middleman. So how do you get started? Before we get started, There's one specific distinction that I would like you to make in your head, just because it's going to help clear up some things a little bit down the line. So it's just between the words workflow and skill. Workflow is the journey. It's the full path from your starting point, your A, to your grand output B. It is that entire path from A to B. And then a skill in this context is just a building block. And that building block can either be one step of that journey, or it can be the entire journey. Or you can have skills that orchestrate other skills, which basically go from workflow to workflow. It can get pretty complicated, or it can get pretty confusing, but don't stress about it right now. Because there's no well-defined definitions of a lot of these things right now, we are actively figuring this out as we are building this stuff. So here's a quick visual to show you what I mean. Like I said, we have the workflow, which is the start to the grand output. That is this entire rectangle here. And then one skill could be end to end. It could take up this entire journey. It could be a chain of skills, or you could have one skill orchestrating others. And these skills, they can be as big or as small as you need. They can be simple, multi-step chained, like a simple one. They could be a single slash command to produce a single report, like the analyze breakthrough I just showed you. It can be multi-step that includes logic. So I have a /day skill that feeds me a bunch of information from different sources, and then uses logic to determine what is relevant for today. And then it's just one skill. It can be a chained output of skills, so you can build an entire life cycle. So for me, I turned my entire development life cycle into a series of skills, which I'll give an example of pretty shortly. And then chained skills is where I think the real compound value lives, because you get to operate or use very complicated and complex workflows, but you get to standardize them in a way that produces some kind of consistency. And of all of the skills that I use, I've identified, or I found that I really only use 4 categories of skills. So I have in the business, this is like tasks, well-known processes, simple things that just take a bunch of time, but they're well-defined. On the business, this is an active improvement for the system that I am building. On myself, so I have my /day, I have /reflect, and I have a few other personal skills. I'm kind of slowly building out my personal operating system, whatever you want to call it. And then we have meta skills. Meta skills are tools that help you build tools. The skill I'm going to give you at the end is a meta skill. It is a skill that helps you identify opportunities in your business to build skills around. So it's not directly on the business, it's not directly in the business, and it's not on yourself as a person. It is actively helping you change and build a better, more effective workflow. And so now I'll actually just give you a quick demo of what a skill like this looks like in practice. So here I've opened up a new session inside of Claude Code. I'm going to go /memo. I would like to build better dashboard commands for the bounty program so that Astrid and the internal ecom talent team has more ability to send DMs to creators, get links, and get more information to each of the creators without me having to be involved in the process. So I can communicate the specific thing that I would like to do, and my memo will really heavily gravitate towards the why. So I have the without having me be involved in the process, because I'll be a bottleneck on that side. And then what it's going to do is it's going to run through its entire SOP. It's going to take the context I have. It has to understand the current state of the dashboard, the bot, everything that we have. And then it's going to basically fetch the content and then work me through a series of questions so that it can produce the required document for the next step. I won't make you guys sit through the entire thing, but basically what's happening here is it is helping. This is like, imagine like a series of prompts that it's going to walk me through, and it's going to ask me a series of questions to get clear on what exactly, like what problem we're trying to solve, why we're going to solve it, how we're going to solve it, when we're going to do it, what's going to be impacted, and then we can move forward to an actual PRD. So super quick, just to show you that's what you can, that's how you invoke it, that's what you can do. And then it allows you to take kind of complex or abstract things and allows you to add some standardization to them each time. Now I want to just give you an example of a problem that we solved a little while ago, or last month, and it was around our bounty system payouts. This used to take Carlo almost 2 full days to go through and do, because we had to pull, well, anyways, it was crazy. But the manual process that we did, we had copy paste errors, we had no reconciliation, it was a trust based workflow, and we couldn't audit or recover anything because it was all manual. And what I've done as of our last payment cycle is I've turned that into an 8 skill pipeline. Each skill calls the next. It's reconciled to the penny. It takes about 45 to 60 minutes for me to process. We identify any mismatch at the source of the mismatch. We verify all of the payments we send out via the Wise API, and then it's idempotent and fully auditable, which essentially means that it's safe to run twice. And if we run it again twice, we're not going to pay out creators twice or anything of that nature. So the cool thing about these chained skills that you can do compared to automations is that with automations, you take a trigger and then you process it in all of the predefined ways that you communicate or that you configure, and then you have one chance. It either runs or it does not run. There's no reconciliation. There's no checks to make sure if things all line up the way that they should. And there's no real flexibility in the process. The cool thing with this payout process that I learned was that in each of those steps, I can tell it to wait for my approval. And then if anything doesn't match, we can solve it right there using the intelligence of the model, and then patch whatever holes we need to, and then proceed, and then do the same thing over and over. So instead of just one long continuous automation where if it's not perfect at the end, the entire process is wasted, you have these blocks of automation where you get the determinism or the deterministic reliability of code, but it's punctuated with discernment and human judgment, which is incredibly important in business use cases. So I can only imagine the type of use cases that we're going to come up with using these skills over the next year, because it's really only been the last 4 months that these have been out. One really cool thing I've learned over the last little while is that you get the best of both worlds while using skills. Is you get like I was saying, the deterministic reliability of code, but then the intelligence to handle the edge cases. So if you imagine, you just have more variability in the process or more acceptable circumstances, which means it's more flexible, more adaptable to real life, because in a lot of business use cases, things aren't perfect. There's some variation. So having the flexibility like bamboo, instead of just snapping and breaking as soon as something applies a little bit too much force, is incredibly helpful. So now that I hope you guys understand why this is so powerful, what types of use cases you can do, and hopefully some of the examples here shed some light on some of the things you can really do, you might be asking, okay, how do I determine what I can actually do for myself? So before we discuss what you should do, we need to first go over what Claude is really good at. Claude is incredibly good at digesting lots of information. It's really good at doing things that are normally cognitively really expensive and time consuming. So if it's good at both of those things, if it's good at doing things that take a lot of time and take a lot of energy, let's just look for those things. So as people, as humans, we only have a fixed amount of budget for time and energy. That's it. We're biological creatures. We only have a specific allocated budget for each of these resources. So if those are two constraints that we have on a daily basis, let's try and identify anything in our day-to-day that hurts or takes large portions of either of those budgets and reduce them as much as possible, or build skills that just entirely handle them for you. And by making this shift, a really nice side effect of it is that it is going to allow you to work more on the business instead of in the business. So now you get to spend your time, your energy, your soul really building stuff that is going to move you forward, as opposed to just being in the business cleaning things up. So I'm going to give you a framework that's going to help you implement this for yourself. It's a 6-step framework, and basically we need to identify the opportunity, reverse engineer the critical path, map the steps to get from where you are to the desired outcome, prove that those steps from A to Z will get you there by actually doing it, do a retrospective and basically trim the fat, and then close the loop and implement all of the feedback from that. And if you do this, it's going to be game changer. But one thing that's really difficult with this is that the identification itself is a skill. You're going to build it over time. At first, you're going to build some probably bullshit systems that are not going to do much, but they were fun to build. They were good learning experiences. That's completely fine. But once you understand how to think about this type of technology, you're going to be able to build more powerful use cases for yourself. And the tool I'm going to give you at the end is going to help you walk through this process, so you don't have to figure it out blind. Like, you're not going into this cold. And if you recall what I was just saying with the life cycle, is that as you go through that process, it's going to take you a little bit of time to figure it out. You're learning a new skill, you're following a different process, you're in a different headspace, and you're just operating from the realm of new, which is more expensive, it's more tiring. But once you've documented the process and once you've at least completed one feedback loop, every iteration gets better, faster, and more effective. And sometimes the build is actually faster, I have found, because if you force yourself to get clear on what it is that you actually want, it's pretty easy to get there. And a lot of the time I realized I've spent wasting my time at work was when I was dilly-dallying, just going around in the weeds of just trying to figure my way out to a certain destination that I hadn't even clearly defined. So sometimes it might take longer, sometimes it might be faster. Just set your expectations that it's going to take some time to get in the habit of this skill. So here's a picture as well. The first time that you go through this, like I said, it's going to be it's probably going to be the most energy intensive. It's probably going to take the most amount of time. It's probably going to be clunky, but every time that you run the skill and every time you go through that skill, especially if you use it the way that I've set up and the skill repo I have for you, it's instructed that every time you complete the feedback loop, we look for opportunities to make it better so that every turn becomes faster, higher quality, more consistent. And I promise you, if you stack 5 to 10 of these that you run on a daily or weekly basis, you are going to free up likely at minimum, I would say 40%, but I would say even in the range of 50 to 75% of your actual work, or the time that you spend working, which means that you're going to have 50 to 75% more time to focus on your business instead of working just in the business. And the principle that underpins this is called closed loop thinking. And this is the single reason why most businesses never improve. It's not because that they don't know that issues exist, it's because they never close the loop and implement the learnings from the previous loop. So this is why you can have a business that's been running for 40 or 50 years, but they just haven't meaningfully changed anything, even though there's been issues for the last 10 or 15 years. And this isn't just due to negligence or laziness. This is sometimes due to the fact that changing processes, especially across organizations, it's expensive. It can be financially expensive, emotionally expensive, whatever you have to do. Like it takes a lot of energy to do that. But if you can get into the habit of doing this at the smallest scale, doing this at a bigger scale is going to be significantly easier. The nice thing about using skills with closed loops is that now your only job at the end is the decision of whether or not you want to implement the feedback or not, because Claude can change all of the documents in the entire process for you. So that cost of changing the process is completely non-existent. You don't have to worry about that anymore. You don't have to update documents. You don't have to train Claude on how to do it. You don't have to use your brain, your spirit, your energy to do any of that. Claude is just going to take care of that. So your only job at the end of every loop is just deciding whether or not the change that you have uncovered is a worthwhile change to implement. Here's a visual example of what it looks like as you start building momentum. Essentially, every cycle that you go through, big and small, if you just focus on closing your loops and you really sit and think with closed or do some additional research on closed loop thinking, the more loops you can close and the more feedback you can implement, the more you're going to learn. The more you learn, the better you get, the better results, so on and so forth. It just exponentially increases. But none of this works without the prerequisite. Underneath all of this is there's a mindset that needs to be adopted, because as you start going through this process, AI is going to show you that you're not nearly as good as you thought you were, or it's just going to shatter your worldview in different ways you can go about doing things, the speed, the fact that you may have thought that you were the only one that could do what you were good at, so on and so forth. So if you go into this process with ego, it is going to hurt. But if you go in with humility and just accept the fact that you don't know as much as these models do, you are going to learn very quickly. And then you're going to realize it's not a threat. It's actively an opportunity for you to get better. It's a feedback cycle. Your entire life is going to get better. Then you also need to have the willingness to change. So after it has shown you truly a better way to go about your work, you need to be willing to implement those changes and suffer through some short-term sacrifices for the long-term gain. If you can't pay that cost, you will stop growing. And that is why most people hit a ceiling. And that is why businesses that have been around for 50, 60, 70 years will have issues like that, and they just stop growing. So your willingness to change is going to be the biggest factor in your success with this. So, and then as you go through your daily workflow, here's a handful of questions that I think it's important that you just bring to the front of your awareness, whether or not you action them right away. It's just, as you do anything, is what would this look like if it were better? What would it look like if it was easier? What am I spending time on that doesn't directly produce an outcome? What's the most repetitive part of my week? Where do I make most mistakes? What would I delegate first if I could? Where do I just where do I find myself procrastinating? Where do I find myself, like, all of those things are really helpful pieces of information that are areas of opportunity for potential skills. And I encourage you to explore a lot of these questions because, like I said earlier, we're still very early in this, and there isn't a perfect rule book or guidebook for businesses to implement XYZ systems and see all of these results. Like, success in this world is not one size fits all. So everyone's brain works differently, everyone's business looks different, everyone's role is different. So I encourage you to use this as an opportunity to get to know yourself better, your relationship with your work, what you like doing, what you don't like doing. Because if you can use these tools and these like this technology to remove the things that you don't like doing, so that the only things you have left to do are the stuff you like, or you like, it's like, that's insane. That's truly incredible what we have in front of us here. So I ask that you be open-minded and flexible what these different skills and tools look like for you. What would help me may not help you. What would help you may not help me. Whatever. Value is not one size fits all. Success is not one size fits all. So here's what I promised you at the very beginning. The framework is the life cycle of how to think about building these skills, and then implementing closed loop thinking so that every time you execute that skill, it gets better. And the tool I'm going to give you is a generative skill. It is a meta skill where it's a skill that helps you build skills. So go down into the description, clone the repo. It's going to walk you through the entire lifecycle audit, but it's going to start a little unconventionally because it is going to audit what you spend a lot of your time doing for things that take a lot of energy, that take a lot of time, and evaluate the value that they drive inside the business. And it's going to prioritize helping you identify opportunities or things that provide no or low value that are required and take a lot of time and take a lot of energy. So if you can just get all of that off of your plate, your day-to-day is going to get significantly better. And then I've also baked a bunch of other things in there that are pretty sweet, that every skill that skill builds, it's going to have all of the closed loop thinking principles in there that make this so powerful and that makes it work. And one more thing before we close out, a lot of people online are going to be telling you to just, download my skill, download this GitHub repo, etc., etc. And almost all of those fail in live businesses because they were built for someone else's context or someone else's business. And because it doesn't have context to your business, it doesn't have anything to apply that intelligence to. So it's going to be inherently limited. So in most cases, if you see repos that people are trying to push online or anything of that nature, unless it is specifically geared at extracting context from you so that it can apply the intelligence and the other context to your situation, most of them you're just better off trying to build something yourself. Because if you build something with your context, with your goals and all of that in mind, you get to build it custom and you get to have full control over that rather than just being reliant on what somebody else had put together. So I would encourage you to spend the time and really go through this and go through a few practice rounds of doing this. And I truly believe that if you implement this, you're going to see life-changing results. So my final ask with all of this, I just want you to go build something. Like I said earlier, if you go through it 5 times and identify 5 high leverage process activities that are eating your time and energy, you're going to have likely 50% or more of your bandwidth back available to do whatever the hell you want with. Whether that's to work on the business, whether that's to take a step back and enjoy some more of the time. it's up to you. You can do whatever you want. But instead of being stuck in those things, we now have the ability to rise above them. So the framework is yours, the tool is yours. All I ask is go build something and let me know if you guys have any questions. That's all I have for you today. See ya.